scholars, brothers and sisters in humanity, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so my topic today is about oppression and female oppression, which I feel very strongly about. For many people, oppression is a strong word, and it's only used to describe the harshest of circumstances, many of which, many people are unaware that oppression actually has a very, very simple meaning, and that this is something many of us have either experienced or actually are guilty of at one stage or another, and that oppression is subjecting others or being subject to prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment. I'd like to examine how women are in fact oppressed today, especially by our brothers on the other side of the fence, and how it is that I came to the path of Ahlul Bayt. So growing up in the Middle East, or by a Middle Eastern family at least, I was taught the importance of community, respect, generosity, and other collective values. And I was taught that the benefit of others should always override the needs of the one individual. On a more gender-specific note, I was also taught that the needs of men are greater than that of women, and that God has elevated them to a lofty status and position. Proof of this has been supplied to me through many, many Quranic verses and ahadith. Now I know that they were either misinterpreted or in fact fabricated. And a simple Google search will bring up exactly what type of untruthful and provocative statements I'm referring to. One such example I feel that I really should share because just how laughable it is. And that is that apparently in Sahih Bukhari, volume 4, Allah's apostle has narrated that we should treat women nicely, for a woman is created from a rib, and that the most curved portion of the rib is the upper portion, and that we should, if we do try to straighten it, it will break, but if we leave it as it is, it will remain crooked. So we should treat women nicely. And you can take from that what you will. I'm not going to elaborate. Some people have tried to justify this hadith in a light that flatters God, our Prophet, and the religion, but nothing that I've come across so far, to be honest, has done so. Now, in comparison, I grew up in London. These Eastern values conflicted with what I was taught here through the media and in school. And of course, I'm referring to the Western values of feminism, complete freedom for all individuals, and that does not differentiate between age, gender, or race. And I did feel that both of these ideologies, both the Eastern and the Western, did have a place in my life, but I could not shake the hatred that I felt at being forced into a lifestyle that I did not choose. I felt angry at always being subjected to these cultural rules that did limit my opportunities for personal development and academic achievement, especially when the motivation behind this treatment was the fact that I was simply a female. But with a hadith like those narrated by Abu Hurairah, which I mentioned earlier, we really shouldn't be surprised that many of us are raised in such negative and distrusting atmospheres, where on a psychological level brings about the expectation for immodest behavior even by the girl herself, and usually results in a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're constantly being told you're crooked, you can't be straightened out, that as a woman, God created you mentally unable to be good, then what is really expected of you? So growing up, I actually believed this type of thing. I believed that religion endorsed these inequalities, and that I wanted to worship God, but I found him very unfair for subjecting me to a lifestyle that I did not choose. And combine these emotions with the kind of society that we live in, you get a feminist, which is what I've been labeled as. All these labels, plus the unfair treatment that I feel that I was subject to, did fester a passion in me for an ideal society. And as a teenager, I was introduced to the Ahlul Bayt, alhamdulillah, by several members of the community. But despite all the evidences that I found to support the allegations made by Shia, to support claims of wilaya and intercession, etc., nothing really shook me more than reading about the women of Ahlul Bayt, how they faced the most horrible of oppression, and that they were taken advantage of because of that perceived weakness of them being female, but they could instead shake the very ground with the truth of their words. As many of us have felt growing up, me specifically, I used to find it very hard talking back to my parents sometimes, no, I think I'm right, this is what I feel. You as my father, you as my mother, you can have the right intentions for me, but I know essentially what is right for me at the end. Saying something like that to my parents was very hard. So imagine the courage and the strength it takes for a woman in early Islamic times to walk into a place filled with men who do not openly support you at best and hate you at worst, and to say the things that they said. Of course, I'm referring to the examples of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam and Zainab alayhi salam. With regards to Fatima Zahra, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, the wife of the first Imam, the mother of the rest of our holy Imams, who is given the title of leading lady of all women by Allah, by God, and who's given the title of the truthful one by the people, the woman who cared for the Prophet all her life, the woman who was blessed by visits of the angels, etc., etc. I could go on praising her. The people thought that they could oppress her. They thought that they could take away her God-given rights. The beautiful thing about Fatima Zahra and her stand against the oppressor of her time is that it was not for herself. She has said in her speech, which I urge every single man and woman to read, she says, "Be informed, I am Fatima. My father is Muhammad. I say not what I say mistakenly, nor do I do what I do aimlessly." Some of our brothers and sisters on the other side of the fence have tried to say, well, even if what you're saying did really happen, that certain instances did occur, surely a woman of Fatima's piety would not concern herself with affairs of the world and affairs of money and wealth and all this stuff. Why would she stand against the Khalifa of her time and expose herself publicly in that way? What they failed to understand is that she wasn't standing up for herself, she was standing up for all women. She was standing up for the rights of the woman to receive her inheritance, the right of the woman to be heard and taken into consideration, the right of the woman not to be buried at birth. In short, she was standing up for the reforms that the Prophet of Islam ﷺ brought to the world. And in this stand, she acted as the ambassador for the Rasul, not letting his absence through his death mean the absence of his teachings. Also, I'd like to point out that in this instance, it was not this female that was crying helplessly while the strong warriors and the leaders of Arabia were out in battle, but it was them who were sobbing whilst listening to her unmistakable truth. Salawat. And not only did I come across this beautiful example of female activism, I also saw the living embodiment of the message of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam in Imam Hussain, the man that we are here to speak about. What I mean by this is that the Prophet is often portrayed negatively, but he managed to raise a nation in us, lovers of equality and justice. He managed to raise Fatima Zahra alayhi salatu wasalam, who was the embodiment of femininity and truth. He managed to raise the grandson in Imam Hussain, who was willing to sacrifice everything to relieve oppression. Himself, the lives of his men, and more importantly, he was willing to risk the life of his successor for this cause. He loved justice, truth, kindness, equality, and all the other qualities that originally derived from God, so much that this life meant nothing to him in comparison. And even if this bloody stand in Karbala did not result in the immediate restoration of good in the world, he could not live with himself if he did not act in this way. This man could have only been inspired by God's truth to be so fearless against a 30,000 strong army. I finally saw in Hussein's example, along with the heroic stand of his sister Sayyidah Zainab days later, that Islam was a religion of action and not a fairy tale story that just preaches holy ideals. If Karbala shows us anything, it's that we are all expected to be ambassadors for good and wardens against evil, women just as much as men. And if women take full advantage of their God-given qualities and abide by God's guidance of modesty, education, respect, and worship, we are also able to shake every room we enter with our actions. Thank you very much for your patience with me. And just to end, not all men are bad. I am married at the end of the day. Thank you very much. Salawat.